A fish called Wanda was so funny that a man in Denmark literally died laughing during a screening. His heart gave out from extended laughter, and paramedics couldn't revive him. That's one of 19 films nominated at the 1989 Oscars, and the financial stories behind them are just as wild. From a $24 million passion project that bankrupted itself to a $1 million indie that returned 12 times its budget, here's what really happened when Hollywood's best met the box office. Let's start with the year's biggest financial disaster, Tucker. The Man and His Dream cost $24 million. George Lucas paid for it himself, out of his own pocket, and it made back just $19.7 million. When you factor in marketing, which typically doubles a film's budget for break-even, Tucker lost somewhere around $28 million. That makes it the biggest box office loss among every single Oscar nominee that year. Not close, not competitive, the clear loser. But here's what makes this hurt even more. Francis Ford Coppola had dreamed of making this film since 1947. He was 8 years old when he saw a Tucker automobile at an exhibition, and he never forgot it. 40 years of obsession led to this moment. The original plan was a musical with Leonard Bernstein composing the score. That version collapsed when Coppola's studio went bankrupt after One from the Heart. Lucas convinced him to try again, this time as a Frank Capra-style tribute, and Lucas believed in it enough to write checks from his personal account. The production tracked down nearly half of all surviving Tucker automobiles in the world. Fewer than 50 existed. They needed them for authenticity. Martin Landau earned a Golden Globe for his supporting role. Critics praised the craftsmanship, the period details were immaculate. None of it mattered at the box office. Audiences stayed home. Today, the film's legacy is measured differently. Collector interest in Tucker cars exploded after release. Some sold for over $1 million at auction by 2008. Both Coppola and Lucas still own 2 Tuckers each, so the movie lost money, but the cars became priceless. I don't know if that counts as a win. Probably not for the accountants. Now let's go to the opposite extreme. Little Dorrit runs 6 hours, not a miniseries. A theatrical release split into 2 3-hour films. Director Christine Edzard and her husband built dollhouses professionally, and they used those same miniature making techniques to construct Victorian London sets at their Thameside studio in Rotherhithe, which happened to be Dickens's own former neighborhood. The lead actress, Sarah Pickering, got the role by writing to producers claiming she was Little Dorrit. She was so convincing they cast her, and then she never appeared on screen again. This 6-hour epic remains her only performance ever recorded. The Los Angeles Film Critics named it Best Film of 1988. Alec Guinness, then 73 years old, delivered what many called his screen monument. The whole thing cost almost nothing to make and grossed just over $1 million in the US. For an art house Dickens adaptation running 6 hours, that's honestly not bad. The British Film Institute included it among the 10 great British films directed by women. Speaking of foreign productions that outperformed expectations, Pelle the Conqueror came from Denmark and became one of the most expensive Scandinavian films ever made at $4.5 million. It earned back about $2 million theatrically, a loss on paper, but it won both the Palme d'Or at Cannes and the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. That was Denmark's second consecutive foreign film Oscar after Babette's Feast. Max von Sydow earned his only Oscar nomination ever for this role, which is insane when you consider the legendary career he had. The Washington Post said his performance was so evocative it made your bones ache. Director Billy August auditioned 3,000 children before finding his lead. Ingmar Bergman watched the finished film 7 times and immediately hired August for his next project. Some films lose money and still change everything. Stand and Deliver proves that. Budget, somewhere between $1.2 and $1.6 million. Box office, nearly $14 million. That's one of the most profitable returns of any Oscar nominee that year. A tiny film with massive impact. Edward James Olmos became the first American-born Latino nominated for Best Actor. The real teacher the film depicts, Jaime Escalante, agreed to let them make it for exactly $1. It took 6 months of convincing before he said yes. Raul Julia was originally offered the lead. He declined. By the time he changed his mind, Olmos already had the part. The film was added to the National Film Registry in 2011, and almost still calls it the most significant project of his career. But not every true story translates to box office success. A Cry in the Dark cost $15 million and made roughly $10 million worldwide. It was one of Australia's most expensive productions at the time, and it became a significant disappointment. The film dramatized the wrongful conviction of Lindy Chamberlain, whose baby disappeared at Uluru in 1980. Meryl Streep earned her 8th Oscar nomination. The movie released just weeks after the Chamberlains were officially exonerated in September 1988, and yet the cultural impact was enormous. The misquoted line, "A dingo ate my baby," became one of the most repeated phrases in entertainment history. It showed up in Seinfeld, The Simpsons, Frasier, Buffy, and Tropic Thunder. Streep didn't win the Oscar, but she won something stranger: immortality through meme, pop culture permanence. The actual line from the film is, "The dingo's got my baby." Nobody remembers that version. Running on Empty deserves more attention than it gets. Sidney Lumet directed. River Phoenix starred at 17 years old, playing the son of radical parents living underground after a 1970s bombing. He earned one of the youngest supporting actor nominations in Oscar history. The film made $2.8 million against a $7 million budget, a significant loss that still stings. Phoenix and co-star Martha Plimpton were dating during production. They'd been together since the Mosquito Coast 2 years earlier. Lumet finished the entire shoot $400,000 under budget, which was typical for him. The man was legendarily efficient. He didn't waste time or money. Critics called it one of the best films of the year. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars. Audiences didn't show up anyway. What gets me every time is how many future stars appeared in these nominees before they were famous. The unbearable lightness of being featured Daniel Day-Lewis, Juliette Binoche, and Lena Olin before any of them became household names. The budget was $17 to $18 million. Box office barely crossed $10 million. A major loss, but the film launched 3 international careers simultaneously. That has to count for something. Binoche was cast just 2 weeks before shooting despite her weak English. This was her English language debut. Olin had given birth weeks earlier and had to lose weight quickly for filming. Author Milan Kundera served as consultant, then later said the film had very little to do with his novel's spirit. He stopped allowing adaptations of his work entirely after that. The adaptation burned him that badly. The film is now in the Criterion Collection and was preserved by the Academy Film Archive in 2019. Sometimes failures age into classics. Married to the Mob made $21.5 million on a $10 million budget. A modest profit. Director Jonathan Demme called it a blatant attempt at commercial entertainment. It features the song Goodbye Horses, which Demme later used to much creepier effect in The Silence of the Lambs. Ray Liotta turned down the role that went to Alec Baldwin. The whole production served as Demme's warm-up for his Oscar-winning masterpiece 3 years later. At least there's that. Bull Durham turned a $9 million budget into nearly $51 million. Writer-director Ron Shelton played 5 years of minor league baseball in the Baltimore Orioles system, reaching AAA Rochester. He named his protagonist after a real 1940s Durham Bulls player named Crash Davis. But here's what nobody expected about the production. They shot in October and November in below-freezing North Carolina temperatures. The story takes place in summer. The grass had to be painted green because it was dead. The iconic Hit Bull win stake sign at the ballpark was created specifically for the movie. The real park didn't have one. The team loved it so much they kept it. That sign still exists at Durham Bulls Athletic Park today. Kurt Russell helped develop the screenplay and was supposed to play Crash Davis. After seeing the finished film with Costner, he wrote fan letters to both the star and director praising their work. Billy Wilder told Shelton after a screening, "Great picture, kid." Sports Illustrated named it the greatest sports movie ever made in 2003. The Accidental Tourist made $32.6 million on a $15 million budget. Geena Davis won Best Supporting Actress for playing a quirky dog trainer who brings a grieving travel writer back to life. The New York Film Critics named it Best Picture. It lost the Oscar to Rain Man, a respectable showing for a quiet literary adaptation about processing grief. Gorillas in the Mist performed better than anyone anticipated. Budget, $12 million. Worldwide gross, over $61 million. That's more than 5 times the production cost. Sigourney Weaver earned nominations in 2 categories the same year. Best Actress here, Best Supporting Actress for Working Girl. Only 5 performers in Oscar history have done that. She won neither, which honestly surprised me. The production's backstory involves tragedy. Producer Arne Glimcher traveled to Rwanda in December 1985 to meet with Dian Fossey, the primatologist the film depicts. She was killed hours before their scheduled meeting. Her case remains officially unsolved to this day. The film suggests poachers were responsible. Now here's a film that went from disaster to triumph overnight. The accused initially received the lowest test scores in Paramount history. Audiences reported believing Jodie Foster's character deserved what happened to her. The studio considered canceling the release entirely. They were ready to bury it. Then producer Sherry Lansing requested a women-only test screening. 18 of 20 attendees had personal experience with assault. When they retested with adjusted marketing, the film received the highest test scores in Paramount history, from lowest to highest. Same movie, different audience, different framing. Foster won the Oscar. The film made $92 million worldwide on a $13 million budget. Kim Basinger, Demi Moore, Jennifer Beals, and several other actresses had rejected the role because of the subject matter. Foster took 5 days to film the assault scene. She later said she blacked out during shooting and doesn't remember it. She broke blood vessels in her eye from crying. The Last Temptation of Christ earned nearly 5 times its budget, despite massive protests outside theaters. Scorsese had wanted to make it since 1972, when Barbara Hershey gave him the source novel on set. Paramount tried in 1983 with Aidan Quinn as Jesus and Sting as Pontius Pilate. Religious groups organized letter-writing campaigns before anyone saw footage. The studio canceled weeks before shooting. Harvey Keitel and Barbara Hershey stayed attached for 5 years until Universal greenlit a stripped-down $7 million version. The controversy was real. In Paris, extremists set fire to a cinema during a screening in October 1988. 13 people were injured, 4 severely. Scorsese received death threats for years. Most critics who actually watched the film praised it as a sincere exploration of faith and doubt. It made $33.8 million. Peter Gabriel's score helped popularize world music. Mississippi Burning earned 7 nominations and 1 for cinematography. Roger Ebert named it his favorite film of 1988. It made $34.6 million on a $15 million budget, a modest profit for a prestige drama, but civil rights activists criticized it heavily. The FBI agents in the film are heroes who crack the case. In reality, black activists drove the movement while the FBI often worked against them. The Boston Globe called it Dirty Harry coming at you from the left. Director Alan Parker scouted over 200 courthouses before finding locations. The rally scene required 750 extras in period costumes. Whether the film deserved its nominations remains debated 35 years later. Dangerous Liaisons won 3 Oscars from 7 nominations. Budget, $14 million. Gross, $34.7 million. Glenn Close delivered what many consider her finest performance as the Marquise de Merteuil. She didn't win. She's never won. That streak continues. John Malkovich and Michelle Pfeiffer began an affair during production that ended his marriage. Uma Thurman agreed to a nude scene, but later expressed dissatisfaction with what she called the voyeuristic final cut. The entire film was shot within 1 hour of Paris using only authentic Louis XIV and XV interiors because the budget couldn't afford to build sets. That's remarkable discipline for a period piece. Working Girl made history with its theme song. Carly Simon became the first artist ever to win the Oscar, Golden Globe, and Grammy for a song she solely wrote, composed, and performed. No collaborators, just her. The film itself earned $103 million on a $28 million budget. 6 nominations, 1 win. Melanie Griffith was struggling with substance abuse during filming, which sometimes interfered with production. Mike Nichols fought for her casting against studio objections that she wasn't a big enough star. The Staten Island ferry opening with Let the River Run became iconic 80s imagery. It still holds up. Big became the first film directed by a woman to gross over $100 million. Penny Marshall turned an $18 million budget into $151.7 million worldwide. The film earned Tom Hanks his first Oscar nomination. But here's the detail that kills me. FAO Schwarz let them film the famous piano scene for free because they expected the movie to flop. They saw no marketing value in it. Instead, the store saw attendance surge to 80,000 visitors daily during the 1988 holiday season. Robert De Niro was originally cast but dropped out, reportedly turning down $3 million. The screenwriters Gary Ross and Ann Spielberg developed the entire concept in 1 hour. Hanks and Robert Loggia practiced on cardboard pianos at home before shooting the scene that everyone remembers. And now we reach the biggest story of the year. Rain Man didn't just win Best Picture, it became the highest-grossing film of 1988 worldwide. Budget, $25 million. Box office, somewhere between $354 and $412 million, depending on the source. That's 14 to 16 times its production cost. The film had theatrical legs of 12.04, meaning audiences kept coming for months and months. One of the longest sustained runs in history, it remains the only film ever to win both the Golden Bear at Berlin and the Best Picture Oscar in the same year. Nobody else has done it before or since. The production cycled through directors including Martin Brest, Steven Spielberg, and Sidney Pollack before Barry Levinson finally took the job. The script was finalized during the 1988 Writers Guild strike. Ronald Bass delivered his last draft hours before the deadline hit. No rewrites were possible during shooting because of the strike. Levinson filmed the ending largely improvised because he had no other choice. Dustin Hoffman based Raymond on real-life savant Kim Peek, incorporating his specific mannerisms, his shambling gait, his peculiar hand movements, his occasional blunt statements. The famous lines became instant classics. "I'm an excellent driver. Kmart sucks. Definitely, definitely." The cultural impact was complicated. Many viewers assumed all autistic people have savant abilities. That's not true, and never was. But autism research funding increased tenfold after release. Whether that's because of the film or despite its simplifications, I honestly couldn't say. Rain Man was the last MGM film nominated for Best Picture until Licorice Pizza in 2021. 33 years between nominations for a studio that once defined Hollywood. That's a dynasty ending and then silence. Which brings us back to A Fish Called Wanda. Budget, $7.5 million. Worldwide gross, $188.6 million. That's $166 million in pure profit, making it the second most profitable nominee behind only Rain Man. It became the highest-grossing British film ever at that point, and the #1 VHS rental in America the following year. John Cleese invested $160,000 of his own money to get it made. Universal passed. Dino De Laurentiis passed. MGM agreed without even seeing a script, which is either brave or foolish depending on your perspective. Director Charles Crichton was 77 years old. Studio executives worried about his stamina. Cleese agreed to step in if needed. Crichton delivered anyway. Kevin Kline won the Supporting Actor Oscar in one of the most celebrated victories that category has ever seen. His performance as the dim-witted weapons obsessed Otto remains legendary. And yes, a Danish audiologist named Ole Benson laughed so hard during a screening that his heart went into fibrillation. He couldn't be revived. The man literally died laughing at a comedy. That's either the best review a film could receive or the worst. Probably both. 19 films, 12 Oscar wins. Combined worldwide gross over $1.6 billion. One man who laughed himself into the grave. 1988 was something else.